Tonight, a special investigation into a battle that has spanned 2 decades and which is about to leave an innocent Adelaide woman homeless. By any definition, Dawn Rowan is a hero, a pioneer and a champion in the struggle against violence in the home, her commitment to helping disadvantaged women dating back to the 80s. Now, it was dangerous and often unpopular work, but her real adversaries turned out to be the state and federal governments who appeared to resent her independence and her success. Dawn and her colleagues became the targets of the most appalling smear campaign. And even though the authorities and the courts have found her in her favour repeatedly, the federal government is moving in to take everything she has in the world. Graham Archer has her extraordinary story.
All of it! I bloody am!
Build up money and got a couple of people on the
The citizen versus the state. Would you recommend it?
Well, put it this way, suicide seems a very sensible option to me. It's diabolical. I couldn't even begin to tell you the damage it's done me.
What you're about to see is the chilling reality of what happens when an ordinary citizen takes on the state.
Torture. It's psychological, social, financial and physical torture.
For those who know what she's been through, Adelaide's Dawn Rowan is a hero, a genuine pioneer in the struggle against child abuse and domestic violence. It was a job few had the stomach to tackle.
I just picked her up and dragged her across the road back to my place, and I told her I was going to give her the kicking of her life. But I had pre-planned that at work. I'd said to 3 or 4 blokes, I'm going to go home and I'm going to give it the biggest kicking of its life because I've had a guts from it. And I must have had a look of a crazy man, because she was like a rabbit ready to run. And I said, you move and I'll drive one and I'll put it right through your heart. And you'll know every second you die.
Battered wives at that point were considered to be whinging bitches, basically, who deserved what they got. And were sleeping on the beach and in chook houses and things like that.
The work was dangerous. And of course many labelled Dawn and her colleagues as ratbags and radicals.
We were considered just the screaming lunatic fringe, who were, nationally this was, not just South Australia, but the women's shelters were considered to be troublemakers because we were outspoken, we were very well organised.
Hello, Vicky, is it? Yes. I'm Dawn.
However, their independently run shelters offering protection to battered women, such as the one Dawn operated at Christie's Beach, were groundbreaking in what they attempted.
And we'll have a look at your room.
And the nature of the work that we did there was quite pioneering as well. And that was about genuinely empowering the women to go back either to home or separately with connections within the community to be completely rehabilitated.
But their vision wasn't shared by the state and federal governments who funded the shelters and who resented their independence.
Government wanted to deny, minimise and trivialise the problem. I got the distinct impression that they were put out by the effectiveness of the shelters and that basically they were embarrassed at the degree of success.
People are seeking the help of shelters more and more.
Dawn Rowan was one of the most dedicated and articulate advocates for the cause, and her critics were many.
And you were characterised as a troublemaker?
Oh, absolutely. An empire builder, the mouth from the south.
For years she fought to support shattered families and hold off those determined to undermine her by planning to take over and turn the shelters back into emergency housing for all comers.
We felt that the complete rehabilitation services that were necessary for families that had experienced domestic violence, including the children, there was a whole complexity of issues that were different to, say, for instance, running a safe bed for the night for homeless men.
When the shelters wouldn't submit to the government's demands, Dawn and her colleagues became the targets of extraordinary and almost entirely baseless attacks. These smears would lead to a legal battle that after almost 20 years is about to leave Dawn herself homeless.
And 18 years also of living with the real terror of bankruptcy and losing everything I owned. But I thought that that would only be a possibility if I lost. I didn't think it would be a possibility if I won.
Her most powerful antagonist was the Minister of Health and Community Welfare, the cocksure and quarrelsome Dr. John Cornwall.
You are the most irresponsible person in public life in South Australia. You are the original middle-aged larrikin.
Cornwall's tactics were hardly subtle and included the threat to withdraw funding, which prompted Dawn and her supporters to demand he hand back his Father of the Year award.
On the grounds that he was denying abused children in shelters adequate support and funding.
For Cornwall, this meant war. He instantly set up a hand-picked independent shelter review committee, with Dawn and her Christie's Beach shelter singled out for special attention.
Were you ever consulted in that review?
No, not at all. In fact, the day that the review was announced, I completely collapsed at work.
To head the committee, he picked this woman, Judith Roberts. Though qualified as a nurse, Roberts was a networker who had spent years on numerous government boards.
She is basically on almost every health, education and welfare committee known to mankind in Australia, both state and federally.
And I take it at the time, no fan of yours?
Absolutely not. There had been difficulties between her and I for some years.
In August 1987, without warning, Cornwall dropped his bombshell, releasing the review's findings in Parliament.
There are a plethora of allegations, and some of them are very serious indeed.
The report, Shelters in the Storm, was pure poison, chronicling the most appalling allegations about Dawn and shelter staff, including their failure to keep proper financial records, professional negligence, misusing, even stealing public funds, and much, much worse.
Sexual harassment of women in a women's shelter, physical and verbal violence of women in a women's shelter, and they're there, because of those issues. Inappropriate exploitative counselling, which was it was a shocking allegation to make.
Was any of it true?
Absolutely not one bit of it.
I've worked in the shelter for 6 years and I've never seen anything remotely like those suggestions.
Some of the allegations of sexual harassment were put forward by Roberts herself, from unnamed sources.
So we've talked very widely in the community and there have been various allegations made. Basically they only left out running a brothel and operating a stolen car racket, Everything else was just about lumped in.
Roberts even went on Channel 10 and the ABC to repeat the allegations.
The report singles out the Christie's Beach shelter with allegations of sexual and physical harassment and intimidation. You're saying that they're up-to-date allegations and they're fact. Every one of those pages is damaging.
Dawn and the others were devastated.
I should have been hospitalised at that point. I could not believe that this was possible in a democracy.
What made the attack even more extraordinary was that a police investigation into the shelter finances had been completed days before and found no wrongdoing whatsoever.
And if you were going to table a report making allegations of criminality about someone, you'd want to consult with the police as to whether you're on safe ground, wouldn't you?
That's right, yes.
Investigations were instigated and then they didn't wait for the results before they released the report. In fact, judged us, sentenced us without a trial.
They were ordered to go back and keep digging. And basically that's what the detectives told me.
Their report, which was never made public, contradicted the review's findings on almost every point and concludes with a recommendation that the government
prevent a recurrence of rumours, innuendo and ill-founded allegations being made.
It was buried. The shelter was also cleared by a corporate affairs investigation, the Ombudsman and a parliamentary select committee inquiry. All too late for Dawn, who had no option but to resign. The funding was cut and the shelter movement collapsed.